Hello crafty friends, I'm Lien and I'm so happy you're joining me again today on the Crafty Meraki YouTube channel. Today I have a really cute wintry card for you guys using products from my favorite things and of course Crafty Meraki. In the description below you can find my supply list, so you can find links to all the products on the Crafty Meraki store and all the supplies I used in this video today. I'm starting out by stamping a couple of the images from the Sweater Weather in the Woods stamp set by My Favorite Things in My Favorite Things Extreme Black ink. I'm using my Misti and I'm stamping them a couple of times to build up that intense black color. And I'm stamping those on Clairefontaine DCP 250 GSM cardstock, which is perfect for alcohol markers. I want some really rich tones in this coloring, but I do want to repeat the colors so it's not too overwhelming. There aren't too many colors going on in this card. I will use some green, some red, and some blues for their outfits, their sweaters, and I'm just using some browns and grays for the critters themselves. Obviously, the fox is going to be orange, and I don't have many orange markers, so this critter isn't going to have as much contrast as the other ones. If I were to make this card again, I would probably up the contrast a little bit by shading or adding some additional shading with colored pencils. For the fox, I chose some blues or some teals and some greens for his little sweater because that would contrast nicely with the orange, and then I can use the red in the other two critters. I love these images a lot. They're perfect for fall or for winter, and I just love their little sweaters. They're so cute, and I had a lot of fun coloring these. I'm using budget alcohol markers. These are the Twin Brush Deco Time markers, and I really like them. They color just fine. I really love how they blend together, but finding different color blends can be a little bit tricky because, as with many of these budget markers, the numbering doesn't make any sense. So it's a little tricky to find your combinations, and what I advise anyone who asks me about this is to just sit down with your markers one day and just find out different combinations you like and write them down somewhere. And if you want to take the time to create a swatch book or a swatch chart, I highly recommend, especially if you're using some of these budget markers, that you make a swatch card not based on just single markers, but make swatches of combinations, and that will get you a lot further than just individual swatches. It will be a lot more helpful when you're coloring. Now, once I have my combinations, I always swatch them out on my scrap piece of cardstock or on the side of my images. I always go from dark to light while coloring, and I find that gives me the smoothest blends. But you do you. You just color the way you like to color and the way you're comfortable with. Coloring is all about having fun. It's just a really fun part of card making, and just relax while doing it. From my background, I am making an A2 size card, but I will be using a Slimline die to create a background. So I am using a Slimline sized piece of blue cardstock to blend a night sky on there. Now, my night sky is actually kind of purplish because I will use some Wilted Violet as well. I'm using the Distress Oxide inks. And I'm just pointing that out because my camera really likes blue and it always focuses on the blue and makes it really punchy. It is not as punchy as it is in the photos. It's definitely more purple than shows up on the photos. So I don't know how to correct that, how to color correct that. I'm not really great at that, but yeah, I chose to go for a purplish sky because I think that gives it a little bit more life than just a blue sky. But starting with colored cardstock just makes it so you don't have to spend ages blending your background. Now I also created some snowdrifts, and I just did that by die cutting scrap pieces of white cardstock. This is again that Clairefontaine cardstock with a circle die, and I just cut some edges off to make sure it fits nicely on my card. I can then use the brush nib on these Decotime twin brush markers, but it's not comparable to the Copic marker brush pens or brush nibs. It's a really felt brush marker, so you can see the individual bristles. It's a little bit different and it's a little bit harder to work with, but I just flicked it up in some pale blues and then used my colorless blender to blend it out into white. And that will give me nice shading on my snowdrifts. To assemble my card, I first glued a piece of craft cardstock on top of a white note card because I really like the craft combination for a fall or winter card. And then using some pieces of thick white cardstock, I added some dimension to my Starry Night panel. This is that night sky that I blended, and I die cut it with the Crafty Twinkle Slimline die by Crafty Meraki. It's such a gorgeous die. And I also die cut this out of gold cardstock, and I'm saving those stars and those little dots from the gold cardstock one to do some die cut inlay. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this took a while. I think I spent half an hour just inlaying these die cut pieces, but I watched some Brooklyn Nine-Nine while doing this. So I had a lot of fun. It was really relaxing, and I just used my jewel picker to do this. It lets you just pick up the pieces, those tiny little pieces, and drop them in the openings. Now, I do add some glue before doing this, obviously, just a dot of the Barely Art Precision Craft glue, and that's enough to hold these pieces in place. Obviously, if you don't have time to do this die cut inlay, I completely understand. I probably shouldn't have wasted so much time on it either. You could just put a piece of gold cardstock behind this die cut. That will save you a lot of time. I just really like the look of die cut inlay, so I thought it was worth doing. And now I'm just doing those tiny little dots, and the trickiest part for that was just making sure they were the right face up before I picked them up with my jewel picker. Other than that, this went pretty smoothly. Now I'm almost done, and then I can glue this on top of my card. And those 3 thick white cardstock pieces will prop it up nicely and give it some nice dimension. I'm just gluing it on with the Barely Art Precision Craft glue, just centering that onto an A2 size note card. I am propping the snowdrifts up on some foam tape. I used 1 layer of foam tape on the first one, and I used 2 layers of foam tape on the second one. Now I will pull the second snowdrift off later and add a sentiment to it. I forgot to film that, so there will be a sentiment on the finished card. For a matching envelope, I used some Starry Night Sky patterned paper, patterned cardstock, and I folded an A2 sized envelope with the We Are Memory Keepers 123 punch board. I can just glue that together with the Barely Art Precision Craft glue, and that will finish up my card and envelope for today. I really love how this card turned out. I love using slimline dies or mini slimline dies for A2 sized cards. I really like that little border you get on the edges. I also really like all the dimension in this card. I am a sucker for dimension, and obviously the whole panel is propped up on those white cardstock pieces, but I also propped up the snowdrifts and the critters on some foam tape, so that adds a lot of dimension as well. And I'm so happy I finally got to use this Crafty Twinkle Slimline die by Crafty Meraki. It's such a gorgeous one, definitely a must-have if you're into slimline cards, but obviously, as I showed here, you can also definitely use it on A2 size cards as well. I hope you liked this card and video. If you did, make sure to leave a thumbs up on this video and leave your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to read them. You can also subscribe to the Crafty Meraki YouTube channel for more inspiration. And I hope to see you next time.